Hey everybody, Michael Snyder, Pacific Northwest Weather Watch. Today's January 10th, and right now we are looking at the infrared satellite imagery. You can see BC, Washington, Oregon, Idaho. Check out the frontal system, just now making its way east of the Cascades. Got some showery weather behind it. Going to keep some of the mountain snows ongoing. As we go through the day today and into tomorrow morning, we'll take a look at the latest here. We got some interesting weather coming for portions east of the mountains, and this frontal system could drop an inch or two of snow, even down towards some of the valley areas, including Boise, Idaho, and especially some of the higher terrain. And that's going to be starting up here over the next few hours. We'll take a detailed look at that here in a moment. And looking at the visible satellite, you can kind of see how some of this activity behind the frontal system continues to push into the Cascades, which in fact reminds me to go ahead and do this. We're going to come out and we're going to take a look at the Doppler radar and let this run through and kind of see what is convergent zone activity here right near I-90, which could be impacting some portions of like places like Snoqualmie Pass, especially north of I-90 there. So some of the shower activity is going to be continuing on as we go through the day today. We'll take any snowfall we can get. We're going to go through a dry period here coming up as well. I'll show you that. And if you haven't heard, technically La Nina is here. We have not officially, we have a ways to go before we officially get La Nina conditions, which is 5 3-month running periods of negative zero point 0.5 or lower across the equatorial Pacific. But the atmosphere is starting to resemble La Nina conditions, and you can see climate.gov making this announcement yesterday. I get a lot of questions about which is the best weather station to buy, and for the money, you cannot go wrong with the Tempest. It's got a great smartphone app. And if I take a look here, I'll show you this is on top of my pole now. And I'm comparing it versus my Davis 3 Cup that I've been running here for almost 13 years at this location. My highest wind gust is 60 miles per hour. Last night actually woke me up. We had a gust of 24.5, I think it was, on my Tempest, and 26 on the Davis. So I'm going to compare these wind speeds here over the next few minutes. You can see that about 24.4 there on the Tempest last night. And again, that's what woke me up right about, 5:15 a.m. And if we take a look here, you can see the 3 Cup, it came in at 26, and my Davis Ultrasonic 24. So the Tempest did pretty good there, and you can see the timing of that, 5:13 and 5:14. So always fun to watch a weather station at your place of residence. And so we got winter weather returning here. This is ongoing as we speak. Frontal system moving in and trying to bring some lower elevation snowfall. Check it out. Spokane National Weather Service put this out here just a little bit ago, about an hour ago. You can see some heavy snow along a frontal band. Could drop a couple inches of snowfall. Low confidence in the exact amounts, but you could get some flash freezing here with this as well, again, along that frontal band. And that could include Boise, Idaho as well. We'll take a look at the North American high resolution model here in a moment. But we've got this today and the next couple of days across some of the Idaho Panhandle and western Montana. 1 to 2 feet of snow above 5,000 feet. 70% chance or greater than 8 inches for Lookout and Lolo Pass. Lookout Pass is right here along I-90, so major thoroughfare there. And yeah, you can see some other details here as well. But yeah, take what we can get as the storm moves through the area here, and there could be more in the way of interesting cold Arctic weather here for portions of Montana coming up, and we'll see how that's going to impact the Pacific Northwest here in a moment. Winter weather advisory through from 10 a.m. until 4 a.m. Saturday, 6 to 10 inches. Also some gusty winds. There are a couple wind advisories out there as well. And Blue Mountains of Oregon and Washington above 4,000 feet. And the winter weather advisory will continue all the way on in through 6 a.m. tomorrow morning for 2,500 feet plus. And yeah, you saw the convergent zone activity there still continuing as we go through this morning. Now, this is about 10 a.m. This is where we are right about now. There's 11, 12, and you can see around noon you start to pick up some of that snowfall across some of eastern Washington, and that moves down towards Boise as well, as again, a couple inches not out of the question for some of the valley areas, and of course higher amounts across the higher terrain. Some of the rain could be mixed in for the very lowest elevations as well. And you can see this precipitation continuing as we go on in through the day tomorrow. Some of the showery activity across the higher terrain all the way on in through Saturday afternoon, evening, and in through Sunday morning. And then we're going to dry out for a bit here as we get a bit of a pattern change and we try to bring some Arctic air down across western Canada or central portions. I'll show you that here in a moment. But 24-hour snow total ending tomorrow morning. And you can see there's Boise down here. Again, you could get some snow down into the valley areas there with that frontal system as it's passing. And you see the Cascades of Washington, Oregon there as well. So here's the European. This is actually hot off the presses. Let me update that to see how much data we have loaded. There goes that frontal system moving across the area. Keep some of the showers going through Saturday. And then we dry out for a bit. You notice the storm track is up towards Haida Gwaii, southeast Alaska as we go through Tuesday morning and we go through Wednesday morning, and then maybe a very weak system brushing the region here, kind of in advance of some Arctic air trying to move down across the region. You see it's not bringing much in the way of precipitation here across the Pacific Northwest, but it could bring some snowfall here as it initially comes down. And again, we're watching the track of this. Some of the models have been bouncing back and forth on just how close this cold air is going to get to places like Washington and Oregon. How much of that is going to leak out, and how big of an impact it's going to have across Idaho and Montana as well. Those are things we're going to be watching closely. I'll show you more on that here in a moment. Now, 24-hour total. So here, we already looked at that. We're going to skip that for now. But let's look at the artificial intelligence European, the 06Z run. There's our frontal system going through, and then we look for this pattern change to come. You can see the cooler air start to arrive as we go through. This is about Wednesday night here. We go through Thursday, and you can see the very cold Arctic air. Again, the bulk of it stays east of the Rockies, but some of this is going to try to leak out into central BC and potentially out into some places of Washington, Oregon. You can see this pretty chilly air mass sitting up across the Intermountain West, but look at this Arctic air mass just absolutely ripped down east of the Rocky Mountains there all the way to Texas and into Mexico. So we'll watch to see how much of that cold air is going to include us here in the Pacific Northwest, and you can kind of see a chillier signal as we go towards the end of January for portions of Western Canada and Alaska. Are we going to get some kind of trigger to help unleash that cold air back into the Pacific Northwest? Who knows, because right now the models keep showing it and keep pushing it back. But if we look at the GFS 12Z run, let's see what it has to say about this upcoming cold snap. There's the initial one here. We're not worried about that. Stays east. And then we look to see that cooler air arriving. You can see it moving across the Gulf of Alaska. And then you can see some of this cooler air. This is at 5,000 feet. It shows you where this Arctic air is going quite nicely. But you see some of this is leaking out into some of the lower terrain areas, or I should say east of the Rockies. But it's not much. We're not getting that big buildup of the very cold air that you need across central and southern British Columbia here, right behind the mountains, to help develop some cyclogenesis and give us some kind of lower elevation snow event. You see the bulk of that cold air, again, stays east of the Rockies on the GFS as well, but we do get a piece of it here, so we got to be careful. In some places just to the east, Idaho and Montana, you can see getting very cold. Some of this cold air could be working its way, especially east of the Cascades, eastern Washington, Oregon also. So GFS ensembles. This is the 12Z run versus yesterday afternoons. And again, 5,000 feet, temperature anomaly. Ensemble mean is the average of all 30 ensemble members. And those ensemble members are perturbed. Their initial conditions are tweaked from our best understandings of the atmosphere to try to correct for any misunderstandings we may have in what is going on in the atmosphere. So the average of all 30 of these, you can kind of see it is getting a bit colder here as we went through this morning as far as the mean temperature there at 5,000 feet. But again, the bulk of that staying east of the Rockies, but it does clip some portions of the Pacific Northwest. And what this could mean actually for a time is cooler and drier than normal conditions. But there's other scenarios that can unfold as well. You can get a cold pool building up east of the mountains, and you can get some strong offshore wind events here if you get a low pressure up the coastline, for example. Or if things line up just right, you can get some overrunning events for some areas of the Pacific Northwest if you've got cold air trapped, and there's some freezing rain potential as well. But that's all stuff we will have plenty of time to watch and see. Now looking at 2-meter temperature anomaly. So this is a Fahrenheit on the GFS. We're going to scroll out into the future here, and you'll see this air mass come in here. We start to bring it in out of the north and west, but again, the bulk of that cold air stays generally off to the east of the Rockies, but some of it will be clipping the Pacific Northwest. So we could be in one of those cooler, drier than normal patterns as we go on in through the second half of January. And if we take a quick look at 925 millibars Get this ridging off the coastline here after that frontal system moves through. So what we're waiting for is we're going to see this shift out of the north and west, and there it goes. We start to bring some of this cooler air in here, and then you can see as we bring some of this cooler air down, what you see here is you see a little bit of that outflow trying to get down to the Fraser River Valley. Of course, it's going to be, we're not going to be dealing with any kind of snow event here for western portions of BC, Washington, or Oregon, but you can see the cold air conduits at work, and there's the Okanagan River Gap, and you can even see the Purcell Trench out here, bringing some of that cooler weather down into the region. But again, it's going to just kind of be clipping us with that cooler weather as of right now. There's still time for it to change, but the models are in pretty good agreement with the bulk of that Arctic air staying off to the east. Now, taking a look at precipitable water. So I want to show you this just to show you the Arctic air mass come down. This might highlight it the best. This is precipitable water percent of normal. So as we go on in towards 180-hour period, you can see what is a classic characteristic of an Arctic air mass. It's very, very dry. So you can kind of see that. It leaks out in our region here, but it does not get, again, out into central BC where we would need it, where it would flow off the coastline, interact with some warmer ocean waters, develop some cyclogenesis, and all it needs to be is subtle cyclogenesis with cold Arctic air coming off the continent there, and that can develop some lower elevation snowfall events for us here west of the Cascades. But that does not look like it is going to be the case with that round. However, we still have a ways to go for winter, and there's always hope in the extended forecast. Now, taking a look at Quilly, you can see the control run showing things cooling down a little bit here, but again, the Arctic air just not making its way out into the lower elevations of the Pacific Northwest. Bellingham, you see a couple ensembles have some chillier temperatures, but the vast majority are not showing that cold air intrusion getting in here. The control run does have it fairly chilly, and you can kind of see the blue run there. So the control run's kind of doing its own things. Again, coming in on the lower side of the ensembles. The European has 50 ensemble members. We perturb all those initial conditions. We tweak them a little bit to try to correct for any errors and our misunderstandings in the current conditions of the atmosphere. And I believe the blue boxes here are between the 90th and the 10th percentile, or it could be 75th and 25th. I'm drawing a blank right here, but you can see the control run is either below that, no matter what. Some of the more extreme ensembles are a bit colder, but you see the mean right there, not too big of a deal. And here's Spokane, better chances for some colder air making its way out into some of the elevations of eastern Washington and eastern Oregon. And of course, across British Columbia as well. Once you're east of the mountains, you're probably going to get colder also. And you can see some of those chillier solutions showing up there. But again, a lot of them in the ensemble mean aren't really that cold. I mean, it's chilly, but not Arctic air cold. And just a reminder here, we do have some considerable and some moderate avalanche danger. Avalanche.org or Northwest Avalanche Center is great to check before you go out. You can click on these individual locations, and they talk about snow levels and give you all kinds of good details here. And as far as elevations and different avalanche danger as well. 6 to 10 day, that's not telling us much. Below normal signal continues. 8 to 14 day, the Climate Prediction Center backed off on that cold air, and you can probably know why. But this is probably going to get a bit of an upgrade here, especially for Montana and east, maybe a little bit of Idaho there as well. And then we got the below normal signals. We go through January 23rd. And so let's take a look at the extended forecasts as well, since we seem to do so every single day. This is the weekly's ensemble mean. There's actually 100 of these ensemble members on the weekly that goes out 46 hours. We're looking at 7-day, 2-meter temperature anomaly. And so as we scroll off in, let me back up there. We're at the end of January, and you can kind of see that cooler than normal signal there. So not much else you can really ask for. At least this signal is showing up if you are a cold weather lover here. So there is something to kind of get excited about as you go through the month of February. But right now, who knows? We'll just continue to monitor it and see how it trends. And if we look at 7-day precipitation anomaly, you can see over the short term as we go through January 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and end of January there. But you see some precipitation starting to return to British Columbia here. But then what happens as we go on into early February, maybe we'll start to get some systems back in here. And again, if things line up just right, maybe some of that colder air will be around, and it'll help trigger some kind of lower elevation snowfall event or something like that. I know I get so many questions about that. And maybe if nothing else, it'll bring some nice mountain snows in here as we go through the first half of February. Who knows? Flip a coin on that. But anyway, yeah, frontal system, watch out, eastern portions. And you go to the 11, 12, 1 o'clock hour, you're going to get some snow rolling here across eastern Washington, Oregon, and potentially down into places like Boise. And again, we're going to have these snow showers going on for the next few days. We'll continue to break things down as we go through the extended forecast over the next few days. Otherwise, I hope you guys are having a good day. Click like and subscribe. We'll do this all again tomorrow, and I will talk to you guys then.